Let's be real, there is a lot that goes into applying for college musical theater programs. You need support around your singing and acting, audition material that fits you perfectly, plus audition cuts, piano tracks, self-tapes, essays, resumes, and wildcard videos. Whew, it is a lot, and it can be overwhelming and costly. Today, we're chatting with someone who recently went through the college audition process, and she's sharing the 5 things she and her family did to make it easier.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Cortman Westfall, a Broadway music director, conductor, voice coach, and tenured professor in the musical theater department at the University of Michigan.
And I'm Chelsea Wilson, a performer turned voice teacher to Broadway stars and vocal coach on Broadway productions like The Phantom of the Opera, School of Rock, and more.
Here on the Broadway Vocal Coach podcast, you can expect real talk about the business, practical advice, and constant encouragement.
We believe there's space for every artist in this industry. All you need is the right support. So consider us your 2-woman hype team. Welcome to the Broadway Vocal Coach podcast, where we help musical theater performers get unstuck and take the next step in their careers. Well, we are so thrilled today to welcome a friend of ours, our very own BVC intern, Emily Baggarly. Hi, Emily.
Hi, Emily.
We are so thrilled to have you with us. You're calling in from New York, and you just made the move to New York.
Yeah.
How is that going?
Yeah, it's been 3 months, and it's going really well. It's crazy to finally be where you always imagined you would be, and to kind of not be a student anymore. It's a weird feeling, but it's exciting.
We're going to be talking a little bit about your college experience and how you have ended up here in New York in the final semester of your senior year. It's a super cool opportunity and program through your school. So I'm going to ask you about that a little bit later. But for everyone listening today, I want to share a little bit about Emily and tell you a little bit about her. Emily is about to graduate from Otterbein University with a BFA in musical theater and a minor in dance. Prior to college, she was a company apprentice with Inland Pacific Ballet and studied in the summer with the American Ballet Theater and the Boston Ballet. In high school, Emily graduated valedictorian with a concentration in musical theater from the Orange County School of the Arts, and also served on the California State Thespian Officer Board as vice chair and then chair. Dang, Emily, that is such an impressive resume, and you haven't even graduated college yet.
Thank you.
Okay, so which brings us to the fact that, yes, you are about to graduate, but you moved to New York City 3 months ago. Tell us a little bit about this second semester senior year experience that you have the opportunity to move to New York through Otterbein. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so with Otterbein, our second semester of senior year, we get to do an in-person internship in a major city of our choice. And the goal is just to get professional experience before we're kind of launched completely into the industry. So I'm in New York, and I get to internship with Broadway Vocal Coach.
We are so lucky.
Yay.
We've loved having you. You've been so great.
I imagine that's a nice transition too, from student to dipping your toes into what it's like to live in New York City while still having a bit of a safety net of school and professors and your classmates nearby and that you're in contact with. How has that been for you?
Yeah, it's definitely really nice. It's great to have that safety net, because New York City can be pretty overwhelming. And I'm glad I don't have to completely start my professional career right away. I get time to kind of figure out what I like best about the city and how to be calm and how to kind of protect my energy as an artist, and where I like to take class and look at different jobs slowly, and get a slow start on such a big transition with my class, which is awesome. Yeah.
Did most of your classmates end up in New York for their internships, or are they elsewhere?
Yeah, the majority of my class did end up in New York, but there are a few in Los Angeles, and I think there's one in Chicago.
That's so cool. Well, awesome. So, Emily, you are about to graduate college. Wow, can you even believe it? No, the answer is no. But that means that just a few years ago, you were going through the college audition process. You undertook this whole wild journey of applying to musical theater programs across the country. And we have so many questions for you, and we're going to kind of I know you've said that there were 5 things that you and your family did that made the audition process so much easier for you, and those are the things that we wanna talk to you about today. Sound good?
Yeah.
Okay, let's dive on in. The first thing that you said made a big difference for you and your family was having the money talk. What's the money talk and what did it consist of?
Yeah. So the money talk is something that you want to do right away with your parents. You want to do it while you're making your list because ultimately that's going to be one of the biggest deciders of where you go, whether you get accepted into that school or not. A few questions I would ask and research with your parents or your guardian is how much tuition, like how much the school costs, because very likely you'll have schools that you kind of eliminate immediately from what you discover from that. And then another thing to research is if they provide scholarships. I wouldn't necessarily say you have to eliminate a school immediately if it seems out of your family's financial budget, because I've had friends who it was kind of a reach school for them financially, but then they were accepted and they were able to kind of negotiate scholarships. So if it's a school that you are really excited about and you want to try for, I wouldn't say you should take it off your list, but I definitely think the money talk is so important because and I also had a friend who this happened to, you don't want to get accepted to your dream school and then find out right before you have to decide that you can't make it happen. And your parents also don't want to crush your dreams. So I think getting them on your team, being very transparent about it will make it a lot easier and save you from heartbreak. And also, like, for me, I have a twin brother, and so where we ended up going kind of depended on the other twin. So I,
Right.
I ended up going to a school that was less expensive than what we thought, and they offered me more scholarship than I thought. So then my brother was able to go to kind of a more expensive school because it just leveled out that way. Yeah, so the money talk is definitely important, even though it can be kind of tricky. Another thing to talk
Mhm.
about, I think, and to learn early about is the FAFSA, which is a
Mm.
form that I
Mhm.
think you fill out every year, and it's how you figure out how much like federal student aid you get, because that also will be a huge indicator of what schools are kind of in your family's reach.
Filling out that form is crucial, and you can go online and find the dates that you're able to sign up and fill it
Hmm.
out, but crucial for all families to fill out the FAFSA. Yep.
Yeah, and it's kind of a pain. So kind of figuring out what you need for that early on for sure is important. So the money talk is hard, but it should be a huge factor in how you build your school list.
One other thing about the FAFSA is there are online seminars that are offered. Many states offer online seminars. I just took one myself because my son is an upcoming senior and we are going to be going through this process in this coming year. And I've so far taken a couple just free webinars that the FAFSA folks offer. So if you go online, they offer lots of different times and it's just a good way to get a little more information, find out all the dates, find out what you have to do. So I highly recommend that.
One other thing, if I could add another thought to this money conversation, is majoring in an arts major, a performing arts major, whether it's musical theater or violin performance, is really time intensive. Part of this conversation should be, do you expect to hold down a part-time job while you're going to school, or do your parents expect you to hold down a part-time job to be paying for some of these expenses? For some folks that really might not be feasible. However, I've had friends who during their college years really needed to hold down a part-time job and made arrangements with the program that they were in to, be a little bit more lax about whether they were required to be in a production that semester so that they could have their part-time job that was really crucial for them and their family being able to go through and pay for school. So consider that too. What kind of time do you anticipate being able to put towards a part-time job if that's necessary? And again, back to this idea of the expectation. What are your parents expecting of you, or what are you as a parent expecting of your child? And getting so clear on that from the beginning, like you said, Emily, will save you a lot of heartbreak and a lot of just confusion when you actually get to a point where you've got to make decisions.
Hmm. Another thing you can look for is called work study. And it's basically a part time job, but it's through the school so that what you're earning goes directly to your tuition. And
Oh,
so
that's
that's
such a great
also
point.
something to look for.
Mhm.
And it's something I would actually ask students who go to the school, particularly about if a part time job is feasible and if work study is offered, because I feel like a lot of times, I mean, you can look at the curriculum when you're researching the school, but the reality of how much time things actually take, I think, you can only get a sense of that if you talk to someone who goes to the school and who is actively doing it. Yeah, yeah.
That's a great point.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point as well, because I know in my college experience, which granted was many years ago, I usually was holding down 3 jobs simultaneously because I was at a school that was expensive and I did not have financial help from my parents, so I was mostly cobbling this together by myself, and it was doable. I did it, but I missed out on a lot of social events, a lot of I have very few friends left from college, mostly because I just didn't get to know a lot of people because I was either in the practice room all the time, I was doing my homework, or I was working one of my jobs. And it's a little bit of a regret that I have. I sort of wish that I had been at a place that might have been more affordable, where I wouldn't have had to work so hard while I was there to be able to take advantage of so much of the other things, the other life experiences that you get in college. So that's another thing to think about too, is how much are you willing to do in order to go to a college that's really expensive? And that's from your parents' side too. I've known parents that have taken out second mortgages, that have maxed out credit cards, that have taken on second jobs themselves. And it can create a lot of stress. They're hard conversations to have, but they are really, really important conversations to have. Emily, your next point was about organizing your auditions. So, we're talking about the time after you've done your pre screens. You've gotten through all of those, you've submitted all the pre screens, you've had that waiting period where you're waiting to hear back from schools to see are you going to get any live auditions? And if so, at what schools and when are they happening? What was your strategy in that period of time?
Well, I remember my mom put up this giant piece of paper in our living room. And you can do this on like an Excel sheet, Google Docs, whatever works for you. But for some reason, my mom decided to put up this giant calendar, and we went through and you start getting your callbacks back. It's honestly such a puzzle. And I think what people don't necessarily anticipate is how detailed it has to be. When you go to these callbacks, oftentimes you can pick a location at a unified audition, and they're in New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles.
And can you explain, just for folks who haven't heard of unified auditions, would you explain a little bit more of what those are?
Yeah, unifieds are honestly, in my opinion, the most fun part of college auditions. And it's usually held in some hotel in the city. All of these colleges come and they're in like these conference rooms, and you just go back and forth to all your auditions in the same location. Yeah, it's so fun.
Yeah,
Anyways.
exactly. It's the colleges come to you instead of you
Mhm.
going to all of the different colleges. The colleges all
Yeah.
converge on one city on one weekend, and you can hit a lot of your auditions all at once.
Yeah. Yeah. But the thing that I don't think people anticipate is how detailed it has to get, because I did New York and Chicago Unifieds, and my parents decided to do two because of timing and for our like anxiety and the stress of getting to different places. We chose to do two to spread them out. But what you don't realize is that you're not scheduling one callback for each school. You're scheduling a singing callback for that school. You're scheduling a dance callback. And sometimes you're doing a singing callback for one school, and then you're running to a different room to do a dance callback for another school. And you're running to another room to do an interview for another school. I did a music theory test, and it's all is this giant puzzle. And it's also not something that is completely timed out, because auditions never are on schedule, really. So you kind of have to figure out the logistics, and also kind of have to decide where you're willing to spend some money to alleviate stress. Or yeah, this is also kind of part of the money talk too, because it costs money to travel and to stay in hotels for multiple days, costs money to go to a campus. But right now, actually, this wasn't when I was auditioning, but it's a new thing kind of after COVID, really, is you can do a Zoom audition, which that is probably the most cost effective way to do the
Mhm.
auditions. And I know so many people who got in from a Zoom audition. As far as I can tell, it has nothing, where you audition has nothing to do with the outcome.
Yep, I would agree. I would agree. And I think schools work really hard to make that the case.
Mm-hmm.
We're aware that there's an added stress for the folks who are auditioning, thinking, am I somehow being penalized by not being at the school? Am I somehow being penalized if I'm doing Zoom versus live? And in my experience, the faculty who are running these auditions are really very consciously trying to make sure that they're giving everybody as similar of an experience as they possibly can.
We had one of our BVC Aspire students from last year in our 2022 cohort who lives in Singapore, and traveling to the US for multiple weekends to do multiple weekends worth of auditions was just not an option. And so she completed all of her live auditions virtually on Zoom, and she has wild stories to tell about the time difference and the auditions, but she really made the most of it and had some really great experiences, and she's getting her results right now and about to make some final decisions in the next couple weeks. But it absolutely works. You're not penalized for not showing up to audition on campus or even to audition at Unified. This is such an important thing to keep in mind with your time and your resources.
Another thing that I would add is also, when you're scheduling this part of the college audition process, know how much school you're missing, because I was actually very aware of it, but me and so many of my friends ended up getting a slip from our school that said, you're on track to not graduate because you've missed X amount of school days. And like, you want to make sure that you're still in school, you're up to date on your assignments, you're
Wow.
communicating with your teachers, because I know friends who missed, I would say, maybe 30 days of school, which is a lot.
Wow. That's a lot of school. That's over a month.
Yeah, if you can maximize your time around that, that's crucial. I totally agree. Ooh,
Mhm.
wow.
Emily, you have one other little bonus tip about when you have multiple auditions in a single day, or when you're at Unifieds and you've got many auditions over the course of a couple days. What's that extra little tip that you can share?
Yeah, so I made a little binder and I basically printed out all of the research I had done prior when I was picking my schools, and kind of highlighted the key things that I liked about the program and that I thought would make me a good fit for the program. Because oftentimes you will be asked in the room why you're a good fit or what do you like about the program. And if you're going from room to room, it's so easy to be like, I promise I did research, but I have no idea. I don't
I
remember
can't
what's going
remember
on.
anything about your program right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. So definitely having something that you can look at when you're sitting, waiting to go in the room, and remind yourself kind of the people you're going in to see, what that program is, and remind yourself like why you chose it.
That is one of my favorite tips, Emily. I love that tip so much because I can concur that a lot of times when we ask folks a question, you get a little bit of a deer in headlights look,
Yeah.
and they're nervous, their brain is at maximum capacity with information that it is currently trying to keep stored and organized. So I love that tip of having a hard copy, a binder. I suppose you could do it on your device as well.
Yeah.
I just think that's great that you can do a quick look right before you go into any of those rooms and be ready to go.
Yeah, and I would also say, make sure you're also kind of reminding yourself what makes you kind of special that has nothing to do with theater, because those are also the deer in the headlight moments. If your brain is so on the train of like technique and logistics, and then you're asked in the room what you like to do besides theater, that is definitely a question that I got that I was like, I haven't even thought about anything like that for the past few months. So definitely something to review.
I love that.
The sweet spot for college audition prep is approaching, and you do not want to miss it. If you're worried about missing the boat on college musical theater auditions, don't worry, you're in the right place. BVC Aspire is our 4-month college audition prep program for rising high school seniors. If that's you or your child, then this is where you need to be. And here's why it works. Aspire includes everything you need to successfully apply to college programs within a fixed yet flexible 4-month time period, June through September. It's a fixed price, so there's no surprise costs, and you get your applications in at the start of senior year, saving you months of stress and opening up time for all the other stuff you want and need to do, like, I don't know, your school show or a part-time job. Registration is open now and doors close on May 15th. We have limited spots available for our 2023 program, so now is the time to act. Sign up for BVC Aspire and get the edge you need to succeed in the highly competitive world of musical theater. Ready to get stressing over college audition prep off your plate? Schedule a free consult with us. Email hello@bwayvocalcoach.com or check the link in our show notes to book a call. We'll talk to you soon. This conversation about auditioning and unifieds versus on campus brings me to your next point, Emily, which is touring schools. And this is something that folks and families can get started with really early. They're touring universities and colleges their sophomore year, their junior year, into their senior year. That gives you more information, helps you understand what you like about a campus. But what was it that you and your family did regarding touring schools and programs that you were interested in?
My family decided early on that I wouldn't tour a school unless I was accepted there. And this was for many reasons. One of them being it was just it financially made more sense to wait until I was accepted to buy the plane ticket to go see it. The second reason was because you don't want to like fall in love with the school and then it makes it so much more devastating if you don't get in. So kind of protecting your heart as well. And then the third reason is because it's hard when you're in the middle of auditions and you're trying to actively kind of impress people and you're trying to kind of promote why you would fit in a program. It's really hard to actually genuinely get a sense of if you fit in that environment, that social environment especially. So touring after you're accepted and after your auditions is just so much better. It's a better way to get a vibe of the school because a school, it could be your top school, but ultimately you're going to be there for 4 years. And if you don't like the vibe socially, or if you don't click with faculty, you don't really want to pay that much money to go to a school where it's not your people. And that's hard to do when you're kind of in audition mode and impress mode.
I think that's such a great point. Yeah, because the stress, some of the stress anyway, is off. Once you know what your acceptances are, then when you go visit a school, it really is with oh, this would be a place I could go to. In actuality, this could be real. And I think it's just very different than when you visit a school hypothetically thinking maybe this is a school I might get into. It's very different. And also in most schools, I think when you are accepted into the program and you're waiting to make your decision, when you go visit at that point, usually you'll get access to classes. You might be able to watch a rehearsal of a show. You might be able to watch one of the productions they're doing. You'll meet teachers. You'll just get a wider range of an experience of like a real-time experience of what it's going to be like at that school than you might get if you tour earlier and you get sort of the run-of-the-mill tour versus like we're going to let you into all of our classes and into our rehearsals and all of that. It's just a very different experience.
Yeah.
Let's talk about another topic, which is online posts. This one is tricky, I think, and I love how you framed it in your experience. Can you tell us about what you chose to post and what you didn't choose to post along this journey that you took?
Yeah. I'm going to preface this with I had a very kind of hyperbolized experience with college auditions because usually when you're applying to colleges, it's like maybe max 5 people from your theater program auditioning. But I went to an arts high school, so there were 60 of us.
Oh my goodness. 60 all applying to musical theater?
It was crazy. During acceptance season, we would be in class because we had academics until 1 and then we had musical theater until 5. And I remember we would be sitting and calls were going out and you would be in class and you'd like hear somebody get the phone call and like, you had to live kind of deal with acceptances and
Oh,
everything.
wow.
Oh, it was crazy. But that
That's
being said,
tough.
that's yeah, and it's why I have kind of such a unique look at how people are kind of affected socially by this. And so when you get your acceptances and your rejections, for example, I was a person who I got into one school, but then your friends, my best friend, got into every school. And I think what people don't realize is that if you're in either situation, there's so much pressure and so much that that person is dealing with that if you're a parent and you're posting about all of your child's acceptances, it not only is hard for the people who are going through rejections, but it's also putting so much pressure on your kid who might have gotten in anywhere but now has to make a decision. I just think it should be such an intimate, private experience for others, but also for your own kid. But even for pre screens, I
Mm.
especially wouldn't advertise where you get called back because then everyone will know where you didn't get accepted if you're advertising it, and
Mhm.
it puts so much more pressure on the kid. Yeah, and it's socially such a hard situation regardless of if you get a ton of acceptances or not. So I would definitely be careful with how you're celebrating.
Yeah, it's so tricky, right? You wanna celebrate, you wanna be excited, and at the same time, there is so much disappointment that happens in this process for almost everybody. It sounds
Hmm.
like you had one friend who maybe had the opposite experience,
Yeah.
but for the most part, I only know people who have both.
Hmm.
Some good and some really big disappointing news at the same time. And as much as we all want to say, I'm going to be supportive of my friends no matter what, the reality is it is really hard.
Yeah.
And I love that it's just another way of sort of protecting your heart and protecting your friendships, protecting
Hmm.
those around you as well, and just keeping it a little more intimate until you have an announcement of where you're going to go.
Yeah.
My mom and I, when we went through this process, it was 2007 into 2008. So, like the stone ages of the internet, but we did have the internet. And my mom discovered the Facebook groups and College Confidential. And it was almost like the more she learned, the more she read, the more stressed out she and I both
Hmm.
got. In some ways, there's so much benefit to having an example of what it's like to go through this program, maybe to hear from someone who went through it last year and here's what to expect timeline wise, or okay, the school's rolling out their acceptances here and there. But just be wary, set your own boundaries for yourself around how much you choose to engage if you're a student or if you're a parent, honestly, especially parents. Put boundaries around how much you choose to engage, how much you choose to share and consume on these online message boards and just in your own sphere of social media as well, because you're exactly right. It's overwhelming. It's really hard to stay out of a comparison mindset. And the fact is, you and your child, or you and your family, you and your parents, you're on your own journey and you'll make decisions based on your outcomes, your opportunities, and looking sideways, being comparative to others is only going to increase the stress. So, if you can mitigate that stress, this process is stressful enough. Choose where and how you want to engage in more of that stress, and be really honest with yourself about what's helpful and perhaps what's not. I love this point, Emily. I think this dovetails beautifully into your last point, Emily, which has to do with how you treat everyone along the way throughout this process. We've talked about this before on the podcast with our head Aspire coach, Julie Kavanaugh. We've had a little bit of this conversation, but I'm so curious what your perspective is on this, Emily, as someone who went through this process. What do you think about the importance of being kind and gracious to those around you as you go through this process?
It's especially interesting now that I'm about to graduate because so many of the relationships I built during unifieds are still so strong now. Yeah, I would say the college audition process is your first chance to start networking kind of on a big scale, because the friends that you make at Unifieds will continue past college. And I know when you're in high school and when you're applying to college, it seems like college is like the biggest thing that you're ever going to do, but it goes by so fast. And then you're going to move and start your professional career, and those relationships that you keep, that you make then, will be so important when you reach this part of your journey. It'll feel big when you're there, but it's such a small, close knit community. I had an acquaintance who was not so kind in the college audition process, and honestly, I didn't think anything of it. But I had people come up to me from different schools completely randomly and be like, "Oh, I met that person. They were not kind to me." And they remember that. And so it's just not how you want to go about it. Being in the mindset that you're in competition with everyone around you isn't going to help you, because you're not really. It's a numbers game, and everyone's unique. So just try to make as many friends as you can, help the person next to you, because it'll ultimately be so powerful for when you graduate college, and it will follow you. So be kind, make friends.
And it follows you both ways. It follows you
Mm-hmm.
when you haven't been kind or generous or gracious, and it follows you when you are. Chelsea and I both know folks who are so kind and so generous and hardworking, yet not competitive in sort of an underhanded way. And that has followed them. You get to the point where you think, I want to work with that person again and again and again. They are such a joy to be in the room with. So it really follows you both ways, whether it's being unkind or being kind. So choose kind.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing too is, you can only go to one college. You can only have one university experience, but at this point you will have auditioned for many faculties, many teachers, all of these folks, and so many of them work professionally in the business outside of their role
Mm-hmm.
as educators at universities. So keep that in mind as well. Just because you didn't go to this school doesn't mean you're not going to overlap or one day audition for a member of that faculty again. Every single person that you meet, it's a small world, and it's so important that kindness and an open heart is part of your experience, because at every step of the way you are impacting others, and that's impacting how others view you.
Emily, this was so helpful. Thank you for these 5 points. I think they're going to really help a lot of folks as they start to think about their own audition journey. Is there anything else that you would like to share with our listeners before we sign off?
I have one like specific thing and then one maybe bigger thing. But the specific thing actually has to do with essays, because I was thinking about this today.
You know, I'm passionate about my essays.
Yeah. And well, they're the part of the college audition process that is so tedious, and you feel like you need some sort of divine inspiration to write the best thing ever. And I was thinking about it, and what I did was actually really interesting. Was I looked back at what I had written previously in high school, and I actually happened to write a personal narrative my freshman year of high school, and it was like really interesting, and it had like a lot of aspects of my artistry that are really specific to me, like, and I actually pulled that and repurposed it, because I did write in a ninth grade, so it was rough, but I redid it as my senior high school self, and I submitted that. So I think you can be creative with how you go about the essay process. There's a chance that you've already written something that's very similar to what you could present.
I love that idea, Emily. And I'll tell you why I really love it is because writing essays, I think, are yet another place that folks will sometimes get hitched up thinking there's a game to be played, that I've got to write a certain thing, I have to be a certain way. Whereas if you're pulling from material you wrote when it had nothing to do with
Mm-hmm.
auditions and nothing to do with getting into college, there might be some really good, authentic material there that isn't
Mm-hmm.
clouded with that feeling of trying to come up with the right answer. So that's a great idea.
Yeah.
And what's your bigger thought?
My bigger thought, I think, And I think this is something that people don't think about necessarily, because when you're starting to apply for college, you're thinking so much about logistics and doing the right thing. And I think, preparation is important, but I think the most important thing is figuring out how to kind of, maybe this is the wrong word, but kind of market what makes you special, like bring what makes you special to the front of what you're doing. And especially because, I had friends who, what makes them special is kind of loud, and they're extroverted, so it comes very easily to them to share it. But I'd be curious, because this is what happened with me, is what makes me special is more quiet. And I think being
Mm-hmm.
able to find a team that can help you discover that and put it out in a way that is still authentic but showcases who you are, because I think that's where, if I could do the college audition process again, I would try and figure out how to authentically put myself out there and not be so worried about being extroverted, or like,
Mm-hmm.
loud isn't necessarily the right word, but like loud with my what makes me special. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's
Oh, I
that's the
love
most
that.
important part, and it's hard because hindsight is 2020. But
Yep.
I love this point, Emily, and this is something that we really focus on within our college audition prep program, BVC Aspire, is getting to know the students as individuals and not just actors or singers or dancers.
Mhm.
Certainly, understanding and featuring your skills and your talents to the best of your ability in this process is important, but who you are and what makes you interesting, whether, like you said, it's something flashy about you, or whether it's something more quiet or more subdued or more of of an internal or a soft skill. Like, those are all things that make up who you are, and it's essential. Like you said about kind of going blank in the audition room about, like, well, what do you like outside of theater? We forget all too often that showcasing who you are, and like you said, marketing who you are in this process is about the entire package, the whole self, all of your interests, all of your background, all of your skills, and not just the performance ones, not just the ones that we see on stage. So I love that insight. And I think this is something that we really highlight with our students in BVC Aspire.
And I think also, if you approach it with that mindset, it makes the kind of recovery process so much easier, because then you're not worried about, like, I chose the wrong song, or I did this 16 bar cut wrong. You're not thinking about the logistics. You just can be proud that you authentically showcased yourself, and what happened happened. And I will say, even if it's something that you struggle with, I ended up exactly where I was supposed to be. And the faculty that have the resources for you to help you get better will recognize and see what makes you special. But yeah, it'll help the recovery process to be proud that you, like, authentically showcased yourself.
You phrased things so beautifully that I think are going to really resonate with folks who are about to take this journey, and folks maybe who are currently wrapping up this journey and
Hmm.
about to hit that recovery period that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And you just described it so beautifully. So thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you for having me. This was my podcast debut.
Podcast
Yes.
debut.
You nailed it. You booked it.
Thank you. Yeah.
You booked it.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a screenshot, tag us on Instagram at BWay Vocal Coach, share this episode with a friend, and consider leaving us a review. And if you're ready to take your next step in this industry, but aren't entirely sure what that should be, then take our quiz. We'll strategize with you to outline a roadmap to your unique goals. Plus, from there, you can book a free consult with us. Visit bwayvocalcoach.com/take the quiz. We can't wait to hear your story and help you take the next step in your career. Thanks for listening.